So let me talk about a problem that we are already going through. We are running Docker commands, Docker run, vq-d, -v, -p, lot of options, lot of information, image name, their tag, and you already see for one single Docker container we are giving that many options and the command is too huge. And if you have multiple containers to run, running such commands again and again can be cumbersome and it's error prone. It's very easy to make mistakes from that. How about we put all that information into a file and we run the file docker compose.yml as a file. So you have to install a tool called as Docker Compose. It doesn't come by default with the Docker engine. You have to install this tool. When you have this tool installed in your Docker engine, you can write a docker-compose.yml file, put all the information of your container like image name, port numbers, volumes, all the information, and you simply say docker compose up and it will launch all your containers. Yeah, I know this sounds similar to Vagrant file, and yes, you can take that analogy. You can compare Vagrant with Docker Compose. That's going to be a right comparison. Where in Vagrant file you mention information of the VMs and then you say Vagrant up, it launches all your VMs. Similarly, in Docker Compose file you mention information about the container, you say Docker Compose up and it will launch your containers. For this one we'll directly go to the Docker Compose documentation. Docker Compose, go to Docker Compose documentation, Compose overview. Compose is a tool for defining, running multi-container Docker application. Did I tell you -f link is a bad option, deprecated one? Docker Compose is better one. You mention all the container information, multiple container information in your Docker Compose file, and it will be connected together. First we'll see how to install Compose. So we have Linux machine. Let's click on that tab, Linux tab, and this is the command to download the Docker Compose binary. Let's log into our Docker engine and let's run that command. Now this is downloading Docker Compose binary files. User local bin docker -compose, that place. You have to make it executable, and the same thing that it says over here. Let's copy this command. That's it, done. Installation done. Docker -compose -help. I should have given -f help. Anyways, showing it. So Docker Compose ps, Docker Compose up, create and start containers, but you need a Docker Compose file for that. So without wasting any time, we will create our own Compose file with the information of our Wipro app, Wipro DB, and Wipro Nginx. We have already built the images. But before I go there, let's take a view, take a look at the Docker Compose documentation. So you have to create a file, and the file will look something like this. Version 3, that's going to be the version of your Docker Compose. APIs, services. It's a YAML file. It's gonna look same like a playbook, Ansible playbook. So services, that means the containers, and then you have web container here and Redis container here. Web container here, you have an option to build. You can build your image and run the container if you have a Docker file, or you can run it directly from the image also, like it's mentioned here. So build dot, it will look for a Docker file locally in the local directory, build it, create a container with the name web. Ports, now ports are again a list of ports, so it starts with hyphen, so 5000 mapped with 5000. Volumes, you can specify the volume. Again, it's a list, so you can have list of volumes. So dot means current working directory will be mapped with /code directory of the container. And this another volume, which is a volume. This is a bind mount. This is a volume mount. Links, if you really want to link the container, but really this is a deprecated one, so you don't really need to use this. Redis, and Redis is another container, and it is going to be launched from this image. And you can also specify volumes to be created. Here this option will create a volume, and here this volume is connected to var log directory of web container. Once you have the Docker Compose file, you can say Docker Compose up -d, which will make sure it runs in the background. You have getting started here. So there are some example of building a Docker file, building an image with Docker file, and writing this Docker Compose file. You should go with this exercise. It's going to be one more exercise for you, Docker Compose up, and that's it. That's simple. But we have our own application vProfile, and for that we are going to write a Docker Compose file. So in short, really, Docker Compose file, it's all the information for your Docker run commands of multiple containers. The Docker Compose is going to be more powerful if you use it with Docker Swarm, which is going to be an orchestration tool where you can have multiple copies of the same container running. Like I'm talking about high availability, multiple Tomcats, multiple DB containers, like that, when you use it with an orchestration tool. Otherwise, it's simple. You just mention the information of your container in the Docker Compose file and you say Docker Compose up, and that will be happening on the same Docker engine, same Docker host. When you're using Docker Swarm, then it will be distributed in multiple Docker engines. So enough talking, let's write a Docker Compose file for our vProfile application. And in here, let's create a directory vProfile. Okay, I'm in my Docker engine. I'm just creating some directory structure, whatever name you can give. But the file name has to be docker-compose.yml. So let's start. First, version 3, which is the latest one. Next, services. Services will be the name of the containers. So first I have Wipro Nginx, and here we have image setting here and the name of our image. So let me go to Docker Hub and get my image names. As I told you, when we are building these images, we are going to need them later also. So it's better you build your images. So web, that one. Okay, and I have the tag as latest only here. Oops, that doesn't look good. Right, ports. So ports, so I'm going to use the same host port and same container port. So again, it's a list of ports. So if you have multiple exposed ports, so you can keep giving them like this, like probably 8090, you want to map with some 8080 port which is running inside that. So you can give list of ports, but we really have just one port. Next, we have the application Wipro app, and we specify the image. It's Wipro app, and again ports, and we have the port 8080, and I'm going to map it with port 8080. The next one is Wipro DB, and when we are running this container, Wipro DB container, we have to give here -e environmental variable options to set the password. So we are going to give that as well over here. First, let's set the port 3306 to 3306, and also like image, like ports, we also have environment variables. So just give environment, and you can give list of environment variable. we have mysql underscore root underscore password. We've seen that when we're linking the container in that session, we have seen when we run the container, we have to specify the option here -e and the password, weprodb pass. So if you have more things like volumes, you can map the volumes. So that there is going to launch 3 containers with those images and port as specified, and also the environment variable for weprodb. Let's save this file. Make sure about the indentation, since we covered about YAML in Ansible, so I'm not talking much about YAML over here. Make sure you work with your indentation. So what all we have to do is we have to say docker -compose up. Before I do that, docker ps, I don't want any port conflict, and there will be a port conflict with 8080 here. So let's remove any conflicts, or if we can change the port number also, but let's keep it that way. This one as well. Okay, docker ps. There's just too much of information here. Let me just stop and remove this nginx. My engine underscore 2. It's really not required, but I just want a clean output. That's why I'm removing existing containers. My search, and also remove it. My search 3. Also will remove this. Okay, these are stopped containers, so it doesn't matter. Right, so we have our docker compose file, and let's say docker -compose up. Okay, so first thing that it is doing, if you see, it's an error. Okay, we have to look for that. I think we're given a wrong name. Yeah, that's a wrong name. It's Wipro Tom app. That's the image name. Anyways, first let's see this. Glad it stopped here. You see, creating network. So first thing it does is it creates a network. See that? It creates a network. And on that network, it will launch all the containers. That's better. So Docker Compose is not going to launch your containers or connect your containers to the bridge network. It is going to create its own network. Well, let's update our Docker Compose file. We have actually 2 mistakes. One is the image name for this, and we have weprodb. We're not going to use the latest tag. We have to use the different tag. We fixed the problem there. We did a bug fix. We're using a different db image. Oh, we did not upload it here. Okay, docker images, docker push, :v2, that one. Now I really don't need to push it because it's there in the local machine. The Docker Compose will find it locally and launch it, but just to be sure, I'm just keeping it in my Docker Hub registry, so even if you want, you can use it. That's there, done. Let's update our Docker Compose file with the tag v2. That's nice. Fine, let's do it. Docker -compose up. Syntax error. Okay, yeah, actually there is port conflict that's happening over here. port 80 bind address already in use. I'm giving in my Docker Compose file port 80 as the host port also, and I had Apache 2 running on my Docker engine, and I don't know for what reason. I just removed it now anyways. So that's the Docker Compose file, and we had some indentation problem also. Somehow this image moved to now got indented too much, so I changed the indentation. I removed the Apache 2 which was running on my Docker engine, and now we will launch it again. Docker hyphen okay, let's see, docker ps hyphen a. I removed all the containers, even the dead containers. There is a command which can remove all the dead containers, docker rm, and it's going to run docker ps hyphen a hyphen q command, which will return the id of all the dead containers, and docker rm command is simply going to remove it. Now there is none, so I'm gonna get error. Okay, let's begin. Docker hyphen compose up. Okay, creating 3 containers, done. Okay, and throws all the output right on the screen because we did not use -d option. -d is going to put it into the background. But anyways, let's first see in the foreground. So all that output that container is generating is just showing all that on the screen. Okay, seems like it's up. So we are running Nginx on port 80. And I can just give that IP. I don't need to give in port 80 like this also. Let's do that. Okay, Nginx is routing the request to Tomcat, and I guess we should be able to connect to the database also. Login, and yeah, you see that all the 3 containers created just like that and are running together, but it's running in the foreground. So if I do Control C, all this will be stopped. To run it in the background, I should give an option -d, which will start the container and make sure it runs in the background. If I want to fetch more information, I can say docker compose logs. It can show me all the logs that's going behind. And there are other options that we get with docker -compose. Let's check -help. Well, I can bring down, stop the containers with down option. I can check the ps, docker compose ps processes, all this 3 container, their port number, right, the status. If I want, I can restart them or remove them or stop them. Docker compose stop. It's going to stop all the containers. And if I want to remove, I can say docker compose rm. It's going to ask me, I say yes, going to remove these 3 containers, gone. Whenever I want it up, I can just say docker compose up. Oh, I should have given again -d option, my bad. Let's do Control C, stopping all the containers, and it's taking time to stop the DB because I think it was in the middle of launching it. So let's remove again everything. Let's say docker compose up -d. You have one more nice option with docker compose, which is docker -compose top. This can give you more insight about the process. The containers are running and any output, any CMD. So that's application, and it's running that command, right? That's the process ID. That's for MySQLD, WiproDB, and that's for Nginx, these 2 processes. So there are quite many options that you can use in docker compose. You can have seen already the command line interface. There's so many options, commands, and then you have in the docker compose file, you can build images, you can attach volumes, you can specify UID, process IDs. But really for now, this much is enough. If you really want to see the real power of docker compose, you have to use it with Docker Swarm. In here documentation, you can see in version 3, compose file reference version 3, you can see build, how you can build images from docker compose file. You can specify the context to docker file, arguments you can pass, Here you have deploy option. Now this is going to work if you have Docker Swarm and you're going to deploy it like replicas. You can have multiple replicas of the same container. That will only work if you have Docker Swarm. Environment, we have already seen this one when we are exposing an environment variable or exporting an environment variable. And the expose option and lot many option. As I told you, if you have really Docker Swarm, it's gonna work great with that. And in this course we are going to learn Kubernetes. So Docker Compose doesn't work with Kubernetes, it works with Docker Swarm, or it works individually. For Kubernetes we have separate definition files which will be similar to Docker Compose file. So if you have good hands on this one, then Kubernetes is gonna be really easy for you. So really get into this, get your hands dirty, try different options and use Docker Compose CLI command to launch your containers. That would be all in this session. Thank you for watching.